Welcome back. We've hit 10,000 subscribers.
We've hit 10,000 subscribers, and now we need to step it up to hit that 20,000 goal by Halloween. Things might get scary if we don't. Do you know what I'm saying?
You know what I am saying?
CeX sells computers. But I had no idea they'd actually ship me one. They sell cell phones, memory cards, game consoles, and hard drives, SD cards, and Tonys, whatever these things are meant to be. They're all kind of small and easy to send through the post. Computers, though, they're big things. If you sort by highest price, you can get yourself an Alienware rig or some kind of beefy gaming machine. Or you can sort by lowest price. This is where the magic happens. A lot of formerly educational and office computing stock. Machines crying out for a new lease on life. You can order something that should have been destined for the Wii skip, which is what I did. I ordered 2 of the cheapest PCs that were marked available for delivery. One of them was cancelled by CeX and refunded, but the other one arrived. Let's open it up and take a look.
So, the CeX box has arrived. Well, a box from CeX, and inside is a CeX computer. Well, I haven't actually decided if that's what it's going to be used for. Let's take a look. There's our kettle lead. Nice. There's our power. Oh, look at this. Smaller than I was thinking. So this has got to be a micro ATX. This has got to be a teeny motherboard. Yeah, the expansion opportunities in this. There might not be so many. Windows 7 sticker on the front. Interesting. Advertised as Windows 10 on the CeX website. We've got 2, I guess, USB 2.0s, not 3.0s. We do have a Windows license key. Ooh, blur that. HDMI and VGA for output. 1, maybe 2 PCIe slots. We can put in maybe some USB 3.0s or something. Even though we do get 6, a whopping 6 USB 2.0s on the back. That's pretty good. Headphone and microphone jacks on the front. There's our power. DVD-ROM drive. I wonder if there's something in there. Ooh, that'd be exciting. So, I'm assuming this thing then is for ease of access to the...
They're always designed to be serviced quickly at the desk.
Oh yeah, that's clean.
That's the strong point of their design.
PCIe and PCIe 16. We could get a small form graphics card in this, maybe. Because I'm worried we might be maxed out already on our SATAs. Yeah, two SATAs on the Mobo, and they're going to our internal hard drive and our DVD-ROM drive. I wonder what that is on the back. Little reset button, maybe? Got HDMI output, which means I should be able to run this into a capture card. I very much doubt there's copy protection on the video feed. If we can get into it, standard Windows, then we can see what spec it is and then work out where we're going from there. So a little bit concerned that there's not really major expansion opportunities for this, but it could also be used as network accessible storage with its Ethernet port. There's plenty of options, or even something that can just run.
All fit nicely next to an armchair.
Oh, you've already got eyes on this, have you?
As always.
Yeah, you can get your own £43 off the CeX website. I'm kidding. Maybe. Well, we'll see. We'll see what I can get this to do first.
This is how much computing £40 will buy you at CeX. The system came with an operating system pre-installed, Windows 10 Pro. Not bad. I assume this is using the same Windows 7 license key found on the case sticker, as Microsoft operates a perpetual license to discourage users from switching to another ecosystem, like Apple or Linux. The fact this even works at all is surprising for a £40 PC. So Windows 10 agreement, I've read it before. Who's going to use this PC? Archive dive. Would help if I could spell. Create a really memorable password. Create security questions. Really? What was the name of the city where you were born? Wakanda. This might take several minutes. I can almost guarantee it will take several minutes. Windows 10 Pro. Dell Optiplex 390 x64, so 64-bit. The CPU inside this machine is an Intel Core i5-2400, a 2011 processor which is now rather decrepit, and it pains me to say, old. This came as standard in most Optiplex machines of this era. i5 was advertised as i3 on the website, so nice. 3101 megahertz, 4 cores, 4 logical processors. Not very fast either. The PC is also equipped with a rather underwhelming single stick of 4GB DDR3 RAM. At least it's DDR3 and not DDR2. 4GB of RAM. You could probably double that, I suspect, in this machine. Yeah, about what I was expecting for a 40 quid PC. The attached drives are a standard DVD-ROM drive and a 250GB hard drive. Nothing out of the ordinary. The motherboard making all this magic happen is a generic 0F6X5P motherboard, also typical of this era of Optiplex machines, and its size makes upgrading or replacing any component quite the challenge. But because it's a Dell machine, it's very easy to take apart and put back together quickly, which I appreciate. Since this was purchased at CeX, I performed data recovery on its internal hard drive to quell our curiosity, because, as we've ascertained already, CeX doesn't always wipe their drives. Unfortunately, the USB stick I saved the list of deleted files to abruptly died. One of the many older USB sticks I acquired through archive dive hauls, which had been on its last legs. You'll have to take my word for it when I say that hundreds of thousands of files were discovered, but there was nothing interesting among them. It would appear this Optiplex machine likely came from an office environment previously, due to the existence of mainly documents and not much else. They are of no use to anyone now, likely overwritten by me, moving along with the restoration and upgrading process. I tested a few emulators on stock Windows 10 to get a feel for the specs, and that didn't go anywhere near as well as I'd hoped either. OpenGL shared contexts are not supported. Oh no. You know what? This is better than I was expecting. 3DS is at least kind of working. I mean, it's unplayable. Yeah, now we're talking. Okay, perfectly playable. 30 frames. Just call me Sonic. Just call me Sonic. Might have hit our limit with a 3D game. Like, 2D games were alright, but 3D games might be a bit of an ask. Well, I was expecting Mega Drive to work well. I mean, worst case scenario, I spent 40 quid on a machine that will play Mega Drive games. I'd be expecting to see the Atlas logo and the Ractim logo here. If we hear like... Dun, 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 dun. Right, okay, so we're not getting any video at all. Yeah, there's some frame stutter. 100% there's some frame stutter going on here. That is making this very difficult to recommend. Surprisingly playable, considering how poorly the emulators ran. I'll stop giving this computer credit, we just had that massive slowdown. I think the CPU is always going to be a bottleneck. That's always going to be a massive bottleneck. So this PC does not have a truly terrible specification, but you definitely wouldn't want to make this your day-to-day workhorse. Unless you changed something around, like perhaps installing a different operating system. Well, you saw the video title. You know that I went for Windows XP, but let's consider what other operating system options we have. The machine comes with Windows 10 installed, but it's going to struggle to run it well with its current specs. The same also applies to Windows 8 and 8.1 and 7. All of these are a massive ask for its current innards, but if we're looking to upgrade our spec, then Windows 10 becomes a decent option. After RAM, adding a GPU, and swapping out the hard disk for a solid-state drive, of course. What about Linux? I'm quite fond of Linux Mint Cinnamon, a Windows-like distro with great support, a lot of plug-and-play drivers for massive swaths of hardware configurations, and the Linux quality of life features like the software manager and Flatpak for easy installing of new software. The downside, however, is that you're still running Linux. I'm sure we have some Linus Torvalds fans here, but I like operating systems where changing an option is a checkbox, not paragraphs worth of terminal prompts. While it's coming along nicely, there is still rather limited support through Proton for running more demanding PC games. If I intend to use this for gaming, which I do, Linux is a no for a while yet. I had briefly considered more specialized operating systems, such as the privacy-focused Tails, or the God-powered Temple OS, but the novelty of making these OSs our main choice would wear off fast. Windows XP isn't officially supported, and yet, this era of Sandy Bridge CPUs can indeed run Windows XP 32-bit without issue. Also, for an allegedly unsupported operating system, this legitimate driver CD, acquired from the Internet Archive, happily installed the relevant drivers for the hardware inside on XP. Although, even with the relevant .NET framework installed, the Sound Configurator program won't open on startup. It wouldn't be the Windows XP experience without something refusing to work, even with the right prerequisites installed. Windows XP, though, with no upgrades, ran a handful of lower spec games comfortably, and even surprised me with some of its performance in more demanding games, just running on the integrated graphics. What upgrade options do we have? Our base hard drive is a 250GB SATA hard drive, not flash storage. These drives do not play well with modern Windows as your boot drive. It's too slow. Replacing our hard drive with a proper solid-state drive could result in an easy 10 times speed-up thanks to the vastly increased read and write speeds, though we are limited by the SATA 2 interface due to the age of the motherboard. On Windows XP though, there's no need for an SSD. You'd have to install a trim utility, and it's just added work that isn't wholly necessary. We don't need more than 4GB of RAM on XP either. However, if we had intended to stay on Windows 10, downgrade to Windows 7, or switch to an operating system such as Linux Mint, Cinnamon, more RAM is pretty much required to get any decent performance out of the machine. The motherboard has an officially supported maximum of 8GB, a pairing of two 4GB sticks, although it does unofficially support a maximum of 16GB, a pairing of two 8GB sticks. The CPU can be replaced up to the i7-2600, another Sandy Bridge Intel CPU from 2011. The overclocked CPUs are technically compatible. However, the BIOS on this machine does not support overclocking. This negates any increase to performance that would be gained from using those. Unfortunately, the next generation of Ivy Bridge Intel CPUs are completely incompatible, even after BIOS upgrades. So the CPU will always remain a bottleneck for the system, regardless of whether you replace it or not. On Windows XP, the i5 processor should be fine as is. Replacing it isn't going to have that observable an improvement for running games. The motherboard supports graphics cards with the inclusion of a PCI Express 16 slot. However, the small case size makes adding one difficult. Low-profile graphics cards do exist, and while limited in usefulness, can give the machine a massive boost to its gaming and multimedia capabilities. Whatever card we use, however, must operate within the very strict 25-watt limit enforced by the motherboard. There is still remarkable power that could be eked out of this rig with the right parts. On Windows XP, what upgrades do apply here? On good old XP, GPU options for this motherboard consists of the GeForce GT 730, the GeForce GT 610, and the Radeon HD 6450. Newer GPUs than these don't support Windows XP, and we are limited by the 25 watt restriction on the motherboard anyway. The GT730 is the obvious best choice, since it has full support for DirectX 9, so games like Devil May Cry 4 should run nicely. Emphasis on should. Here is the Devil May Cry 4 benchmark on the integrated HD graphics at sub 15 frames per second. Ouch. And here it is on the GT730, still not playable at 1080p. Decent frame rate at 720 though, certainly playable. In the PCIe slot, there's the option of an expansion card that will provide additional internal SATA connections for the storage drives. I would have gone with an M2 NVMe adapter, which would allow us to use an ultra-fast SSD in the machine, but that's not going to work with Windows XP. Where are we with the CeX computer right now? Right now? Windows XP Service Pack 3 has been installed, along with drivers for some of the Optiplex's core components. We have added a GT730 GPU, DirectX 9 has been installed, and some games run well at low resolutions, while others either don't work at all or run very poorly. Although seeing Windows XP running at 1920 by 1080 is magical, and would have blown my teenage brain. The SATA 3 expansion card, that was a bust. For whatever reason, the microcontroller on the PCI card refuses to let any of the devices plugged up to it boot, meanwhile insisting that only devices plugged up to it should be given boot priority. The short of it is, on this motherboard, this particular card isn't going to work out, unless I'm missing something obvious. It could be something as simple as a BIOS upgrade. So for the time being, I scrapped that expansion idea. I wouldn't have room for the card now anyway, physically, due to the large heatsink on the GPU. And the GPU doesn't fit nicely in the case either. It's all gone a bit pear-shaped, really. Rather than installing an SSD in the place of the current hard drive, I swapped the 250GB hard disk out for a 1TB disk instead, giving us effectively 4 times the space, which is complete overkill for Windows XP. Oh, and I fitted a new CR2032 BIOS battery so I could set the date and time, which would otherwise default to February 2011 whenever I unplugged the computer from the mains. The amount of actual computing power you get here for £40 is abysmal when you run the supplied OS, which I'm sure comes as no surprise. I will give CeX credit though. The PC arrived very clean and presentable, minus the little bit of sticker residue on the front of the case. As a blank state, there were plenty of expansion options we could consider. As unable to let go of the past as I am, I chose to run mid to late 2000s PC games on it. The idea of a dedicated Windows XP computer for running that era of software was simply the most tempting option. So I bought £40 worth of computer and ordered another £30 worth of parts, of which only the GPU is now in use. Some parts didn't work, but it's been a learning experience, as well as a walk down memory lane. The goal? Well, I think I achieved that. I think. A miraculously quick Windows XP experience that runs older and outdated games and software I want with no fuss. Well, I still have a lot of fuss, actually. Pac-Man World 2's Star Force DRM results in a blue screen, which is lovely. Thanks a damn bunch. Sonic & Knuckles collection runs at about 64 times speed. Frame rate seems to be tied to the processor. Not much I can do about that. Medal of Honor Allied Assault only appears in the top left, leaving part of the desktop visible underneath. Okay then. Joint Task Force doesn't want to work because it insists on a very specific PhysX, which would break other games. You know what? I am reminded exactly why gaming on Windows XP was such a fuss back then, and honestly, it's been as nostalgic as anything, getting all excited to play a game, just to have it throw a wobbler and say no. A waste of money? Yeah, probably. Wait, no! No, it isn't! I refuse to accept that. I've already tested many games that run like gold already. And this is how I'll be playing them, so I'll get my money's worth. Age of Empires 2, No One Lives Forever, Fear, Duke Nukem, Manhattan Project, the Devil May Cry 4 demo, Far Cry 2. Sure, there's a bit of pop-in, but Far Cry 2 looks great! And Cryostasis? On a low resolution, but still cryostasis! We've only touched the very tip of the iceberg here. Pun very much intended, since cryostasis is set in the Arctic. I'm looking forward to putting this setup through its paces, with further upgrades, decorative improvements, and sweating out the very best visuals and performance that we possibly can. I'm not setting myself a time frame for this, but I'd like to turn this into a gaming beast sooner rather than later. My next steps are possibly a RAM or CPU upgrade, just to wring as much performance out as I can. Installing the Xbox 360 controller drivers, including the wireless controller adapter, and then seeing what kind of emulators will run on this rig with reasonable performance. A quick shout out to our patrons, channel members, and other benefactors. Adam Devine, Devender Gaming News, Garlips, Gorham Gamer, Maddie Shaw, Matthew Cooper, Mr. Derb. I've been Escape Route British. You've been watching Archive Dive. Until next time, if we live that long.